My name is Cora Hemlock. For most of my 34 years, I have lived my life like a carefully tended garden, preferring the quiet order of things. I am an archivist by trade, working for the Port Blossom Historical Society. My days are spent in the hushed, climate-controlled rooms of the city archives, surrounded by the faint, dry scent of old paper and leather. I find a deep and abiding peace in cataloging the lives of others, in bringing order to the scattered remnants of the past. My own life is a small, neat container holding my world's most precious artifact, my 7-year-old daughter, Willow. We live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in the city's historic Mariners' Quarter, a place of cobblestone streets and salt-scrubbed air. From our living room window, we can see the masts of sailboats bobbing in the harbor and watch the ferries glide across the bay like slow, white swans. It is a peaceful existence, one I have cultivated with intention, a quiet rebellion against the chaotic tapestry of my own upbringing. My family is not a garden, it is a wildfire. At its center, burning brightest and demanding the most oxygen, is my older sister, Cassandra. To my parents, Cassie has always been the sun. Brilliant, dazzling, and utterly captivating. She possesses a kind of gravitational pull that reshapes every room she enters, bending light and attention toward herself. I, by contrast, have always been the moon, quiet, reflective, and largely invisible in her solar glare. Growing up, I was the responsible one, the steady one, the one who cleaned up the messes left in the wake of Cassie's dazzling passage through life. She was forgiven for her dramatic transgressions, the lies, the theatrics, the casual cruelties, because she was exciting. I was simply reliable, a quality my parents seemed to find as commendable and as dull as a sturdy pair of shoes. This history hangs in the air between us, a silent, unacknowledged smog. I have spent years learning to navigate it, to build retaining walls around my small, peaceful world to protect it and Willow from the inevitable blaze. But some fires, I was about to learn, are determined to jump any barrier you build. It was the kind of Saturday morning that should have felt peaceful. A soft, pearlescent light, the kind unique to a city by the sea, filtered through the sheer curtains of our living room, painting dusty stripes on the polished wood floor. The air was sweet with the scent of the cinnamon pecan rolls I'd baked, a weekend ritual Willow and I cherished. Her laughter, light and bubbly as champagne, drifted down from her bedroom where she was meticulously arranging a fleet of seashell people on her windowsill. I was humming to myself, wiping down the kitchen counter, when the sound of the front door swinging open, unannounced and unapologetic, shattered the calm. "Hello, darlings. Your queen has arrived." My shoulders tightened into a familiar knot. It was Cassandra. She breezed into our apartment as if she held the deed, a whirlwind of expensive perfume, clanking designer bracelets, and effusive energy. She was dressed for a magazine shoot, not a casual Saturday visit, in a cream-colored silk blouse and trousers that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "Oh, Cora, darling, still playing house?" "It's adorable," she said, her eyes sweeping over my simple cotton dress and apron with a look that was 1 part pity, 2 parts condescension. Before I could form a reply, Willow came pattering down the hallway, her bare feet making soft sounds on the floorboards. Her face, usually so serene, lit up with the uncomplicated adoration of a child. "Auntie Cassie." Cassie's face transformed, her practiced smile softening into something that, for a fleeting moment, looked genuine. She crouched down, opening her arms wide. "There's my little sea sprite. Come give your favorite auntie a squeeze." Willow flew into her embrace. I watched them, a complicated ache in my chest. I couldn't blame Willow for her affection. Cassie was a spectacle. She brought extravagant gifts, told outrageous stories, and treated every moment as a grand performance. She was the human equivalent of a firework display, and I was a quiet, steady candle. "My goodness, look at this hair," Cassie exclaimed, running her perfectly manicured fingers through Willow's waves. Willow's hair was her crowning glory, a cascade of soft, honey-colored curls that fell to the middle of her back. It was wild and beautiful, like sea foam caught in a sunrise. She loved it deeply, and a sense of protectiveness, sharp and sudden, pricked at me. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" I said, my voice gentle but firm. "We just trimmed it last week." "Oh, it's a bit untamed," Cassie said, tugging a curl playfully. Willow winced slightly. "A proper princess needs a more polished look, don't you think, my love?" I felt a chill despite the warmth of the kitchen. "Cassie, please be careful. She's tender-headed." "Relax, Cora," she scoffed, flashing a brilliant smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's just hair. You're always so wound up." I should have said more. I should have drawn a line right then, a clear and immovable boundary in the sand. But the familiar, wearying pattern took over. My parents were due to arrive for lunch in an hour, and a confrontation with Cassie now would only ignite a family-wide inferno that would smolder for weeks. For the sake of a peaceful afternoon, I swallowed my words and offered her a cinnamon roll instead. It was a trade I would regret for the rest of my life. An hour later, the apartment was filled with the loud, overlapping chatter of my family. My mother, Margaret, had arrived bearing a cheesecake from Cassie's favorite downtown bakery, bypassing the homemade rolls on the counter without a glance. My father, Arthur, a man of few words and stern opinions, stood by the window, listening as Cassie regaled them with tales of her latest triumph in the competitive world of luxury real estate, a multi-million-dollar waterfront property she'd just listed. "She's a powerhouse, that one," my father said, a rare note of pride in his voice. "Oh, we know," my mother cooed, patting Cassie's arm. "She just has that spark. You should take notes, Cora. A little more ambition wouldn't hurt you." I smiled faintly, a mask of placid agreement I had perfected over decades. Inside, the old wounds smarted. My quiet life, my meaningful work, my happy child, none of it registered as success in their eyes. It was merely a placid, uninteresting backdrop for Cassie's glittering achievements. Suddenly, Cassie clapped her hands together with theatrical flair. "I have a brilliant idea. Willow, my sweet, how would you like to come upstairs with Auntie Cassie for a super-secret, ultra-glamorous spa day? We'll do a little makeover." Willow's eyes widened with delight. "Can we do sparkly nails?" "Darling, we will do nails so sparkly the sailors will use them to navigate home," Cassie promised with a wink. A knot of pure dread tightened in my stomach. I saw the glint in her eye, the same one that always preceded some chaotic, self-serving act. "Cassie," I said, my voice low and urgent as they started toward the stairs. "You can paint her nails. But do not, under any circumstances, touch her hair. I'm serious." Cassie paused on the bottom step and turned, her expression one of amused disbelief. She held up her hands in mock surrender. "Goodness, Cora, what do you take me for? A monster? Relax. We're just going to have some girl time." She laughed, a sound like shattering glass, and then she and Willow disappeared upstairs. I wish I had followed them. I wish I had trusted the cold, hard certainty in my gut. But I stayed, trapped in the gravitational pull of my family's dysfunction. I sat on the sofa and listened to my mother talk about Cassie's potential promotion, about the new condo she was considering in the city's most exclusive high-rise, about how I needed to be less sensitive and more resilient. Each word was a small, smooth stone dropped into a well of resentment I hadn't even realized was so deep. It was almost an hour later when I heard the soft padding of Willow's feet on the stairs. She appeared in the doorway of the living room, standing very still. Her face was pale, and her eyes, usually so bright, were wide and glassy with unshed tears. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice a tiny, broken thing. "I don't like it." My blood ran cold. And then I saw it. It was a violation. A butchering. Her beautiful, flowing, honey-gold waves were gone. Annihilated. One side of her head was chopped into a jagged, uneven mess, with strands sticking out at bizarre angles. The other side was hacked so short it was nearly shaved in places, exposing the pale, vulnerable skin of her scalp. It wasn't a haircut, it was an act of cruelty, a careless mutilation performed on the most cherished part of my child's identity. My breath hitched. The room tilted. I knelt in front of her, my body trembling with a rage so pure and white-hot it felt like it could incinerate me from the inside out. What did she do?" I whispered, my hand hovering over the wreckage, afraid to touch it. Cassie sauntered down the stairs behind her, holding a pair of my sewing scissors like a trophy. She was smiling. Voila, she announced. I told her she needed a more sophisticated, edgy look. It's very European. My head snapped up. She is 7 years old, I hissed, the words tight and venomous. You mutilated her hair. My mother let out an impatient sigh from the armchair. Oh, Cora, for heaven's sake, don't be so dramatic. It's just hair. It will grow back. Honestly, my father added, not even looking up from his newspaper. It's an improvement. She looked a bit shaggy before. Cassandra did her a favor. A favor. The word struck me with the force of a physical blow. At that moment, Willow's composure finally shattered. A gut-wrenching sob tore from her small body, and she crumpled, burying her face in her hands. She wept on the floor, surrounded by the 3 adults who were supposed to love and protect her, and not one of them moved. Not one of them offered a word of comfort. Except for me. In a single, fluid motion, I scooped my weeping daughter into my arms, holding her trembling body tight against mine. I glared at them, at my smirking sister, my dismissive mother, my cruel father, through a blinding, shimmering curtain of rage. You think this is a joke? My voice was dangerously quiet. You think her pain is entertainment? Cassie shrugged, the picture of unconcerned nonchalance. Oh, lighten up, Cora. It's not like she's walking a runway tomorrow. She'll get over it. Willow buried her face deeper into my neck, her small shoulders shaking with sobs that felt like they were being ripped from my own soul. And in that moment, something inside me, some load-bearing wall of lifelong deference and practiced silence, crumbled into dust. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I simply looked at each of them, one by one, committing their smug, indifferent faces to memory. They had not just crossed a line, they had torched the entire landscape. And this time, there would be no rebuilding. There would only be consequences. I would build something new from the ashes, and it would be a world they would not be welcome in. The next morning, the sun rose over the harbor, but it brought no warmth to our little apartment. Willow refused to go to school. She sat in front of her vanity mirror, a small, tragic figure, touching the jagged tufts of her hair. I tried to style what was left, using soft headbands and pretty clips, but nothing could hide the butchery. Each time she caught her reflection, a fresh wave of tears would well in her eyes. They're going to laugh at me, Mommy, she whispered, her voice thick with a shame that no child should ever have to feel. I sat on the floor beside her, wrapping her in my arms. You are the most beautiful, brave, and wonderful girl in the entire world, I told her, kissing her temple. Your heart is what makes you beautiful, and your heart is perfect. But you don't have to be brave today if you don't want to be. We'll take the day for us. I called her school and my own office, my voice a calm facade over the tempest raging within. We spent the day wrapped in a cocoon of our own making. We went to the aquarium and watched the jellyfish drift like living lanterns. We bought her favorite sea salt caramel ice cream and ate it on a bench overlooking the water, not speaking, just watching the waves. I was pouring all my energy into being her safe harbor, a steady shore against the cruel tide that had swept over her. But beneath the surface of my calm, a plan was beginning to form. It was not a plan born of vengeance, not in the hot-blooded way Cassie might have understood. It was a cold, quiet, methodical plan, the kind an archivist would make. It was about restoration. Not just of Willow's hair, but of her spirit, of her sense of self-worth. I couldn't erase what had happened, but I could recontextualize it. I could take their act of casual destruction and use it as a foundation for something beautiful and strong. That night, after Willow finally fell asleep, curled into my side like a small, wounded bird, I retrieved a locked metal box from the back of my closet. Inside was a file I hadn't looked at in years. My family knew me as the quiet, unambitious archivist. They had no idea that 6 years ago, flush with a modest inheritance from my grandmother, the only relative who had ever truly seen me, I had done something bold. My oldest friend, Layla, a brilliant and passionate hairstylist, had dreamed of opening her own salon but lacked the capital. I gave her the money not as a loan, but as an investment. I became a silent partner in the Gilded Strand, now one of Port Blossom's most exclusive and respected salons. My name wasn't on the door, but it was on the legal documents. The partnership agreement, which I had drafted myself with the help of a lawyer, contained a specific clause, a moral compass clause, we'd called it, giving me final say on matters that could impact the salon's reputation and ethical standing. Cassie had worked at the Gilded Strand for a few months years ago, before she'd moved into real estate, and she still bragged about her connection to it, using its name to bolster her own glamorous image. The next morning, I met Layla in her light-filled salon before it opened. The air smelled of lavender and potential. When I told her what Cassie had done to Willow, showing her the heartbreaking photos on my phone, Layla's face, usually so open and kind, hardened with fury. She did that to a child? To Willow, she breathed, her hands clenched into fists. That woman is poison, Cora. I've always said it. She used my sewing scissors, I said, my voice steady. But she posted a photo on her social media. A picture of the scissors on our table, with the caption, "A little impromptu styling session." She tagged the Gilded Strand's location. Layla's jaw tightened. She's associating this cruelty with my business? With our business. She looked at me, her eyes flashing. Consider it handled. She has an appointment here next week for her color. I'll cancel it. And I'll make sure the entire stylist community in the city knows why. Thank you, Layla, I said. But I was thinking of something more. I paused, taking a deep breath. I want to use the salon. I want to host an event. For little girls. Girls who have felt what Willow is feeling. Layla blinked, and then a slow, brilliant smile spread across her face. Cora, that's perfect. Absolutely perfect. 2 weeks later, we launched the Little Lion's Mane project. We put out a call on social media, offering a free day of pampering and restorative hairstyling at the Gilded Strand for any child who had experienced hair loss or hair-related trauma, whether from bullying, medical treatments, or, as in our unspoken case, family cruelty. The response was overwhelming. Top stylists from all over Port Blossom volunteered their time. Donations of products and gift bags poured in from local businesses. The story was picked up by a popular local parenting blogger, and from there, it caught fire. The day of the event was pure magic. The salon was filled not with the sound of snipping scissors, but with the gentle hum of kindness. There were girls who had lost their hair to chemotherapy, their small heads adorned with henna crowns. There were girls who had been teased for their frizz or their curls, now watching in awe as stylists taught them how to love and care for their unique hair. And at the center of it all was Willow. Layla herself worked on her hair, her skilled hands performing a small miracle. She evened out the jagged edges, shaping what was left into a chic, pixie-like style that framed Willow's delicate face and made her large, thoughtful eyes seem even bigger. When Layla held up the mirror, Willow stared at her reflection for a long moment. Then, for the first time in 2 weeks, a genuine, radiant smile spread across her face. A local news crew was there, and they interviewed her. She stood tall in a sparkly dress I had bought her for the occasion, her new hair shimmering under the salon lights. "My mommy says my real crown is my courage," she told the reporter, her voice clear and strong. I watched her, my heart swelling with a love so fierce it was almost painful. We were not just fixing her hair. We were rewriting the story. Cassie, of course, saw it all. She saw the news segment. She saw the viral blog posts. She saw the photos of Willow, not as a victim, but as the brave, smiling face of a beautiful new movement. And, as Layla had promised, her own appointment had been unceremoniously canceled, with a cool, professional email explaining that her recent actions were not in alignment with the values of the Gilded Strand. But I was just getting started. During the media buzz, I wrote a guest post for that same parenting blog. I told Willow's story, an anonymous but powerful account of a child's trust being betrayed by a relative's cruel prank. I didn't use names, but the details were specific enough. For those who knew our family, the truth was unmistakable. The whispers started. Friends of Cassie's began to distance themselves. A lucrative brand collaboration she had been boasting about for weeks was suddenly put on hold. My parents started receiving concerned phone calls from their friends, people from their church and social clubs asking if the awful story they'd read online had anything to do with their family. The carefully constructed facade of their perfect family was beginning to crack. The inevitable phone call came on a rainy Tuesday evening. It was my mother. Her voice was not contrite, but cold with fury. "Cora, what have you done?" she demanded. "You've made us look like monsters to the entire city." I held the phone to my ear, the rain drumming a gentle rhythm against the window pane. I felt strangely calm. The old urge to placate her, to smooth things over, was gone. "The only monster in that room was the one who laughed while my daughter cried," I said simply. "Oh, don't be so sanctimonious," she snapped. "It was a haircut. You've blown this completely out of proportion, and now you're dragging the entire family's name through the mud, all because you've always been jealous of your sister." The accusation, so old and so baseless, should have hurt. Instead, it felt liberating. It was the last, desperate shot from an arsenal that no longer had any power over me. "The only person I care about in this is Willow," I said, my voice as quiet and unyielding as the tide. "She is a child. You saw her pain and you dismissed it. You chose Cassie's ego over your granddaughter's heart. I will not forget that." "You are making a terrible mistake," my mother warned, her voice dropping to an icy whisper. "No," I replied, a profound sense of clarity washing over me. "The mistake was thinking you would ever change." Then I did something I had never done in my entire life. I hung up on my mother. 3 days later, after consulting with a lawyer who specialized in family law, I had a no-contact order delivered to my parents and Cassandra. It was not a decision made in anger, but in the sober light of self-preservation. It was a formal declaration that the gates to my peaceful garden were now closed to them. They could no longer enter to sow chaos and reap my pain. My world, and Willow's, was now a sanctuary. The months that followed were like the slow, deep breath after a lifetime of holding it. Without the constant, low-grade anxiety of my family's impending dramas, our little apartment became a haven of genuine peace. Willow blossomed. The light returned to her eyes, brighter than before. Her confidence, so brutally shaken, began to regrow, slowly at first, then all at once. Her hair grew, too, into a stylish, curly bob that she wore with a newfound swagger. One afternoon, she presented me with a drawing she had made, a smiling stick figure with a magnificent crown of golden curls, wearing a superhero cape. Underneath, in her careful, 7-year-old print, she had written, "Mommy." I framed it and hung it by my bed. Just as our new life began to feel solid and real, the outside world tried to intrude. A message request appeared on my social media. It was Cassie. "Cora, I know things got out of hand. I've been doing a lot of thinking. I'd love to talk, to apologize to Willow in person." For a split second, a flicker of the old Cora, the peacemaker, considered it. Had she finally understood? Had she changed? The answer came 2 days later, when a friend sent me a link to a podcast. It was one of those irreverent, gossipy shows, and Cassie was the guest. The host brought up the online drama she'd been involved in. Cassie laughed, a practiced, charming sound. "Oh, God, that," she said. "People are so sensitive these days. It's hair." I snipped one little curl and suddenly I'm a villain. It's cancel culture at its most absurd. Any flicker of doubt I'd had was extinguished. The apology was just another manipulation, another move in her lifelong game. She hadn't learned a thing. That was when I knew that setting boundaries wasn't enough. I needed to build a fortress. Not of stone and mortar, but of purpose. I needed to ensure that the world we were building was so strong, so rooted in integrity, that their brand of casual cruelty could never find purchase in it again. And so, I made a move they never saw coming. My father, a man who prized his reputation and his quiet influence above all else, had a significant, silent investment in Crestview Properties, a high-end development firm that was Port Blossom's leading name in community-focused luxury living. They built beautiful, family-friendly neighborhoods and sponsored everything from children's sports leagues to arts festivals. Their public image was pristine. The Little Lion's main project had gained so much momentum that I decided to formalize it, to turn it into a proper nonprofit organization. I called it the Lighthouse Initiative, a beacon of hope for children and families navigating the emotional fallout of bullying and abuse. Our mission was to provide free counseling, confidence-building workshops, and legal advocacy. As our profile grew, we began attracting corporate sponsors. And one of the first major companies to reach out, eager to align themselves with our positive, family-friendly message, was Crestview Properties. They offered a substantial grant and a partnership for our first official fundraising gala, completely unaware that the quiet founder of this viral movement was the daughter of one of their silent partners. I met with Crestview's board of directors. They were kind, earnest people who seemed genuinely moved by our mission. After they officially approved the partnership, I requested a private meeting with the CEO and the head of their ethics committee. I laid it all out for them. I told them the full story of what had happened to Willow. I showed them the screenshots of Cassie's dismissive social media posts, the link to the podcast, and a copy of the no-contact order. And then, I gently pointed to a clause in their own corporate partnership agreement, a clause about their partners being required to fully align with Crestview's publicly stated values of child welfare and family integrity. I didn't have to make a demand. I didn't have to issue an ultimatum. I just presented the facts. The man whose family was the source of the very trauma my organization was founded to heal could not, ethically, profit from or be associated with its work. His presence on their board was a direct contradiction to the values they were now championing by partnering with me. The fallout was swift and quiet. Within a week, my father was asked to divest from the company. He was quietly removed from the board. Years of carefully cultivated influence, of backroom deals and reputation building, evaporated because of one clause and one act of indefensible cruelty. He hadn't been cancelled. He had simply been held accountable. The Lighthouse Initiative's inaugural gala was a night painted in silver and gold. The grand ballroom of a historic downtown hotel was filled with 300 of Port Blossom's most compassionate and influential citizens. The air buzzed with warmth and purpose. Willow, my brave, bright girl, stood by my side, her hand in mine. She wore a sparkling silver dress, and her curls bounced with every step. She was not a victim. She was a survivor, a tiny, triumphant beacon. As we walked the red carpet, a reporter knelt down to her level. "Willow, you've inspired so many people. How does that make you feel?" Willow looked directly into the camera, her expression serious and wise beyond her years. "When someone tries to cut you down," she said, her voice ringing with newfound confidence, "you just have to grow back stronger." The photo of her in that moment, a small girl with a powerful message, ended up on the cover of Port Blossom City magazine. A month later, a plain white envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address. I recognized the elegant, slanting handwriting instantly. It was my mother's. Inside was not a letter, but a single sheet of paper with one sentence scrawled on it. "You painted us as villains when we were just a family." Tucked inside was a faded photograph from years ago, me, a smiling Cassie, and a toddler-aged Willow, all of us posing under a cherry tree in full bloom. It was from a time when I still held on to the hope that we could be a normal, happy family. A time before I understood that their love was conditional, their support a mirage. I looked at the photo, at the ghost of the woman I used to be, the woman who would have done anything to keep that fragile peace. Then I walked over to my office shredder and slowly fed the photograph into it, watching as our fractured smiles turned into meaningless strips of paper. They weren't protecting a family. They were protecting a toxic dynamic. And I had finally stopped letting them. I never replied to the note. Instead, that weekend, at the Lighthouse Initiative's first major donor luncheon, I stood at the podium and, for the very first time, I shared our full story. I didn't hide the names. I didn't soften the details. I spoke of the haircut, the laughter, the dismissal. I spoke of the slow, painful process of realizing that the people who were supposed to be my safe harbor were, in fact, the storm. My voice did not tremble. When I finished, a hush fell over the room, followed by applause that was not just polite, but thunderous and deeply felt. Afterward, a woman with tears in her eyes approached me. She took my hand, her grip firm. "Thank you," she whispered. Thank you for showing the rest of us that silence doesn't have to be the price of survival. I nodded, squeezing her hand back, my gaze falling on Willow, who was happily chatting with another little girl by the dessert table. That was the truth my family could never grasp. They thought that by cutting my daughter down, by extension, they could keep me small and quiet and compliant. But they had misjudged their gardener. All they had done was prune a plant that was destined to grow. And in my garden, now blooming wild and free and full of light, there was simply no more room for weeds.